Hello my friends and welcome back to another video. Today is going to be a very interesting vlog. So if you remember about a month ago on my community tab here on YouTube and over on my Instagram, I asked you all for the scariest book you've ever read. And this is why I wanted to read some of the scariest books you've ever read. Basically, this came about because I'm always looking to be scared when I'm reading horror. I'm always looking for something to scare me. It takes a lot to scare me now because I feel like everything feels super predictable, and I do feel like it is harder for me to get scared through a book versus a movie. So I'm always on the hunt for the scariest book that I can find. I remember when I first started my channel, I would scour the internet for, you know, top 10 lists of the scariest horror books ever made, and I would try to read all of them. Now it's much harder because I've read so many books and I feel like I have just a really hard time finding scary horror books. So I decided to ask you all so that way you could help me instead. I kind of got this idea. I've seen Gabby do this a lot where she reads your thriller recommendations or your horror book recommendations. So I kind of wanted to do something similar but pick the scariest books. So this was actually kind of hard because a lot of you recommended books I've already read, which I'm not surprised by. So it was kind of hard to find some that weren't repeats. Some of you also recommended Stephen King to me, which I'm so sorry I didn't pick any, but it's just because I know Stephen King and I do not get along, and I don't find his books scary at all, and I just usually get bored by them. They're so long, and Stephen King's just not an author for me, so I'm so sorry if you recommended Stephen King to me and I didn't pick it. It's just because I was trying not to pick Stephen King. I did find 4 books that I hadn't read yet and that I thought would be a lot of fun. So let me show you the books that I will be reading in this vlog and who recommended them to me. So the first book that I will be reading in this vlog is The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. This has actually been recommended to me a lot of times, but the person that recommended it to me for this video in particular was Christy's Cozy Reads from Instagram. So thank you so much, Christy. I'm very excited to check this one out. The next book that I will be reading is The Third Parent by Elias Withrow. This was recommended to me on my community tab, and this is from Jelena3354. So thank you so much for recommending this one to me. The next book that was recommended to me was Last Days by Adam Neville, and this was recommended to me by Bookish6 over on Instagram. So thank you so much. And the last book that I will be reading in this vlog is Fantasticland by Mike Bakoven. I don't know how to say his last name. I'm so sorry. And this one was recommended to me by Haley Hughes, who is a fellow booktuber here on YouTube. Thank you so much, Haley, for recommending it to me. But those are the 4 scary books that I will be reading in this vlog. This is actually part 1 of a 2-part series, I guess, that I will be doing this month. The second part will be something similar to this, but not quite the same. So if you enjoy this one, be on the lookout for part 2, and hopefully I enjoy the books and hopefully you enjoy watching me talk about these books. So let's get into the reading and let's see what these scary books are all about. Hello friends and welcome to an update. This update has taken me a little bit longer than usual to do because it's taken me so long to make any progress on this book, but I am about halfway through The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. I don't dislike the book. It's just very gothic, and I feel like gothic books are very slow a lot of times, so I am having a hard time staying focused when reading this book. Like, there's just not a lot going on. I do feel like now where I'm at, it feels a little bit more like things are happening, so I'm hoping that reading the second half will be a lot faster and a lot quicker for me than reading the first half was. But right now I'm on page 149, so that's where I'm at so far. But basically this book is about Elsie. She is our main character, and she is newly widowed. She has gone to her late husband's estate to live and, you know, go through her mourning process. She basically only has the people that work at the estate and her husband's cousin to like keep her company. That's like the only people around her that she has. And, you know, the estate's kind of creepy. It's a little bit, you know, like it's not in good shape. The estate is not in very good shape. You can definitely tell, like, it's not been in its full glory for a while. But now there's like these weird painted wooden figures. They're called silent companions, and they're really creepy. And that's pretty much all that's happening this moment in time. We do have a couple of POVs happening. 2 are from Elsie, just one is kind of in the past and one is in the present. And then another past POV. So there's a lot happening, but also not a lot happening. The gothic atmosphere is good. There are some really like creepy, eerie moments. I just think that the pacing is very slow for me personally, which is a problem that I have with gothic horror. I either find it to like really do what I want it to do, or I find it to be a little on the slower side. And right now I would lump this into the slower side of the category. It's not boring necessarily, it's just, it's kind of tedious to go through for me. I just feel like I'm reading and reading and reading and not a lot's like happening, so I feel like I'm not getting a lot from my reading. But I am hopeful that the second half is gonna be better for me just because of the point in the story that I'm at. It feels like more is about to, you know, start happening now. The stuff that's more like background information and, you know, lead up stuff, I feel like is kind of done now, I think. I feel like we kind of got that out of the way, and now we're finally at the part where things are gonna start picking up speed. So I do feel like the second half will be better for me than the first half has been so far. I'm not disliking it. I'm not loving it. I'm just kind of very neutral about this story so far. I don't have a lot to say because I just don't feel like I have many thoughts on it. And again, I am not the biggest like gothic horror fan. I do really like the genre. It's just something that's very hit or miss for me. So it's hard because I want to really love it, but at the same time, I would say it's like a 50-50 chance that the book actually works out for me. So right now, yeah, I'm just kind of up in the air. I feel like this is one of those books where I'm gonna have to actually fully finish it before I have any real thoughts. It is taking me a really long time to get invested and to actually care about what's going on. So that is a downside for me, but you know, I'm gonna give it till the end and see how my feelings are after I've finished the whole thing, and that's when I will check back in next. And hopefully I have more to say about this one, because I really don't want to just have like nothing to say about it, so I guess we'll see. But I will check back in when I finish this one. Hello my friends, I am here to check in. So last night I finished the Silent Companions and I have some thoughts. So a bunch of people have told me to read this book, and then doing this video, this got recommended, so I was like, this is perfect. I'm gonna finally read this book that everyone tells me I'm gonna like. And I have to be honest, It's an okay book. I can definitely see why people like it, but I think for me personally, it just doesn't quite work. The first half is so slow, and I wanted it to speed up a little bit faster than it did. The second half was a little bit more entertaining, I guess. There was a little bit more going on. There was just more stuff happening, which is why I think I did read the second half much quicker. The first half took me a long time to get into. I was reading the first half for like almost 2 days because I just could not get into it. So another thing that really bothered me about this book is there is a slur that is used against Romani people in this book, and it's used a lot. Like, the word is very prominent. It's every other chapter or something like that. Like, it comes up very frequently. And this book was written in 2017, and I'm trying to remember when I first discovered that that word was inappropriate, and I feel like it was around 2017. This feels very inappropriate to me. I mean, I just don't like seeing that word every time I'm reading. There was no real purpose for using that word either. It was just used to show that the characters had such a dislike for Romani people, which I feel like you could have done without using that word. I feel like there were better ways to just like explain and kind of show instead of just using a word that is so inappropriate. So that's one thing that really bothered me about this book, and honestly probably why I can't give it any higher than like a 3.5 as well, just because I just felt like it was super unnecessary and not needed at all, and it really took me out of the story, and I just like got tired of seeing it pop up all the time. And honestly, like, I could not even count how many times the word was used. It was like very frequently. I hated the ending. I absolutely hate this ending. I did not like it. It was not an ending for me personally. So I am thinking it's going to be between a 3 and a 3.5 star, just because everything added together, it's not my kind of book. It's not my kind of story. As for it being scary, and now scary is so subjective, so for me, I can only speak to what I find scary. Nothing in this book was scary to me. However, I do think it had a lot of creepy and eerie moments, and a lot of parts made me kind of, oh gosh, that's creepy, but I was never really scared. I never got those feelings of being, you know, really intensely scared or frightened during this reading experience. So I personally don't find this book scary, but I can definitely see how it would be for other people. But honestly, I just found this book to be okay. I thought it was fine. I didn't hate it. I didn't absolutely love it. The ending really dropped it for me, to be honest, because I'm just such an ending person, and depending on the type of ending I get, if it feels in line with the rest of the book and it feels like pretty satisfying to me, then I'm more likely to overlook it even if I don't necessarily like the ending. However, in this case, it wasn't satisfying. I didn't like it, and I guess it did feel in line with the story, but it was just a really frustrating ending for me. For those reasons, I just can't give it higher than like a 3.5. I don't think that this is my kind of story. I think the gothic nature just kind of hindered my reading experience instead of helped it out. So unfortunately, this one didn't quite work out for me. So the next book I am moving on to, I just started last night, and that is The Third Parent by Elias Withrow. I'm not that far into this book. I think I'm on, yeah, page like 40, 41, so definitely didn't make it too far into this one last night. But basically, this is about a family, a mom, dad, brother, and sister, and they are cooking dinner one evening, and they get a knock on the door, and when they answer this door, this really creepy, weird looking guy named Tommy Taffy is there, and he kind of just barges his way in, and he's basically holding this family captive, and if they do not follow his directions or his rules, you know, bad things are gonna happen. So I was reading this last night, and as I was reading it, I was like, the name Tommy Taffy is really, really familiar. And the more I kept reading, the more I was like, why is this so familiar? I was kind of racking my brain trying to figure out if maybe I've read a short story from this book, like maybe the book was a short story previously and then, you know, the author turned it into a full-length novel, and I was trying to think if I maybe had read it in a short story collection or something like that, and then it came to me. This was on Reddit, No Sleep, and I had definitely read it on there, which is so interesting because I love Reddit No Sleep, and one of my favorite books of all time, Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach, is a Reddit No Sleep story that was turned into a full-length novel. I feel like this could be a positive for this book. However, I do remember not finishing the Reddit No Sleep because I wasn't that interested in the direction that the story was going. So I don't actually know how far I got in terms of where the book is gonna, you know, be really different. So I am gonna keep reading it. So far I don't have many thoughts because I'm only like 40 pages in, but it's interesting. The writing is alright. It's nothing like amazing, nothing terrible. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep reading this one and hope that I like it a lot more. Hopefully it scares me. Hopefully it's like terrifying. That would be awesome. But that's all I have to report on for right now. I'm going to keep reading this one, and then I will report back when I have a little bit more to talk about. Hello friends, I am here to finally let you know what my thoughts are on The Third Parent. I finished this a little bit ago. I believe it was like 5 p.m. It's like 8 something now. But I did finish this. I have very mixed feelings on this book, and unfortunately this is probably going to be a 3-star just like the last book as well. This is my problem with the story. Is this story scary? To me personally, no, but I think the situation is scary. If it was happening to me in real life, I would be scared, but reading it, it loses a lot of the scare factor, and let me tell you why. The first half of this book is very different than the second half of this book. The first half is very similar to what I read on Reddit, obviously. I did not finish reading this on Reddit. I don't believe so. I'm pretty sure I stopped because I wasn't that interested in it. But the first half of this book definitely follows what I remember from Reddit. I think what my problem is that Tommy Taffy is not a very good villain. Tommy Taffy isn't scary, and the reason is because he's kind of over the top. Everything about him is very over the top, and the way he speaks is over the top. Like, he does this thing where he laughs, like someone will say something and then the only thing you see from Tommy Taffy is just heh heh heh, and it's like it just makes me laugh because I found this book to be comical. Like, I just find it to be kind of silly, goofy, funny, not scary. I think it loses a lot of the scariness because Tommy Taffy is just so ridiculous. Like, a lot of this book is ridiculous. It just doesn't, I don't know, it just didn't scare me. I wasn't very interested in the story in the beginning, but I will say I think the story idea is very unique. I think that the author obviously has like a great imagination, and I think that, you know, the idea is there. I just think the execution is very, very poor for me. But yeah, it was just very like silly. It just came off goofy and just ridiculous. Like, the things that Tommy Taffy did, I mean, his name is Tommy Taffy. I'm not trying to be mean, but Tommy Taffy? Tommy Taffy. How am I supposed to be terrified of this guy named Tommy Taffy? That sounds so silly and stupid. The things he does are horrific. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like, he does do some really horrific things. There is one thing in particular in the book where I was like, holy crap, that's like real messed up, and it kind of got me. That's the only part, and everything else just feels, it's just comical. It's just like, it feels too ridiculous. It's too silly for me. The second half of the book is very predictable. I wasn't surprised in the slightest where it went at all. The one thing that really bothered me about this book is you do get an explanation for what Tommy Taffy is, or who he is, I guess, what, who, whatever. You get an explanation for him, and I don't like the explanation. I think it's dumb. I think it's lame. I think it doesn't really make sense. I think it's kind of just really out of left field. I think it doesn't match the tone of the rest of the book, and it kind of ruined everything for me. Like, honestly, I kind of would have rather not had any answers at all than the answers that we got, because the answers we got were just so lame, which probably sounds very mean, and I'm very sorry, but like, it was just not, it was not it for me. I was not here for it. I did not like it. The writing is fine. It feels pretty average in my opinion. I don't think it's anything special, but I don't think it's the worst writing I've ever read. It just felt okay. Again, there are some really great horrific scenes that could be like super punchy, and then it kind of just gets taken away by the over-the-top nature and the like silly, stupid, goofy aspect. So that was really bothersome, because there is like a lot of like gore and blood and like violence in this book. So I was kind of hopeful, but the comical side really overpowers everything else, honestly. My other thing is like the main character is so stupid in the second half. I couldn't stand him. Like, he was fine as a kid, and then when he grew up in the second half, he annoyed the crap out of me. He turned into a raging dick, and that really frustrated me because I wanted to like him, but I just couldn't. The women in the book are probably treated the worst off. I don't think that's that surprising, honestly. It makes sense, I guess, with the explanation that was given, but whatever. I didn't like that. Yeah, overall, it just wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't really for me. I mean, you know, kudos on the idea. I think the idea is really, you know, interesting in there, but I think the problem is this did better on No Sleep, and then taking it and trying to make it a full-length novel really just kind of ruined it, which is kind of the consensus with most No Sleep stories that blow up and then get turned into novels. The only one that I've really, like, absolutely loved and think is the best of the best is obviously Pen Pal by Dathan Auerbach. I think it did well going from a Reddit No Sleep post to a full-length novel, but Stolen Tongues, I found it a little bit repetitive towards the end, and it just kind of dragged. Again, with this one, I think had it been stopped in the middle of the book and we hadn't had the time jump portion and the second half, I think it would have been better than combining it all together and making it a full-length novel. So honestly, I think that's just a problem with taking it from a No Sleep formatting and trying to make it full length. I just don't think it works. This should probably have been a novella, but you know, I know this has really great reviews and a lot of people really love it. I'm about a 3-star. I might take it down to a 2.5 if I really think about it, but it was alright. The next book, I don't actually know what I'm reading next. I haven't decided. I have a few options, so the next time you see me update, I will let you know what I chose. But as of this moment, I have no idea what I'm reading next, but I will let you know when I start reading it. Hello friends, welcome to another check-in. So I'm here to talk about the next book that I have been reading, which is Last Days by Adam Neville. I'm about 66% into this book. This one is taking me a really long time to read, probably because over the weekend it was Justin's birthday, so I wasn't reading as much as I usually do, so I feel like this one is kind of dragging me a little bit. So this book is about Kyle. He's making a documentary on this cult called the Temple of the Last Days, and it was like this really crazy cult in the 70s led by this woman named Sister Catherine. And basically Kyle is going around to different places like London. He's in France at one point, and then he's in Arizona, and he's interviewing these people. Some are like cops, some are people that were a part of the cult, and he's trying to find out more about this cult because there are some interesting things that went on, and Kyle starts experiencing things while he is doing his documentary. So I love the idea of books about cults, but it feels like every one I read is kind of really disappointing. I do like this book. I don't dislike it. I think it's incredibly long. Maybe it's just me, but it feels like it's dragging. Like, it's taking me so long to get somewhere into this book. Like, I feel like I've been reading it for like 2 months instead of, I don't know, however many days I've been reading it. And I'm just now at 66%, and it's taking me so long. The chapters are really long, and there's a lot of information. It goes into a lot of detail about the cult, which I do find very interesting. I just feel like the book's not doing anything that I haven't seen before. It's hard because, again, this is about like a documentary, and it does have like I think they said it has like a Blair Witch style vibe, which, I mean, like, yes, you definitely get the found footage vibes from this book. But my problem with books like this that are doing a found footage thing, or they're trying to take on a documentary style, you know, plot, it just comes across better in film. I keep finding myself thinking that this book would be so cool as a movie. Like, there are a lot of good creepy scenes in this book. I'm not finding it scary, but it is very creepy. There is some really good imagery and some really good scenes that I feel like stick out and like would linger for a lot of people. But I keep thinking, oh, if this was a movie, I would be super into it because it does remind me of a lot of found footage movies I've loved in the past. So it's kind of, it's hard. It's such a catch-22 with these style of books. And so I feel like while I'm enjoying it, I'm not absolutely loving it. The length is really hindering me at this point. Like, honestly, it's just too long. Like, it's just taking too long to get somewhere, and it's driving me a little insane. I'm a little worried that the ending's going to be very predictable just because the direction we are heading in now feels extremely predictable. I do enjoy Adam Neville's writing. No One Gets Out Alive is one of my favorite books of all time. I find it to be like actually genuinely scary. It's one of the few books that actually scared me. So I do like the writing for the most part. I do like the plot. I do think it's interesting. I'm just having a hard time connecting with it. There's nothing in particular that's standing out that's like making me not like it, except for maybe the length and the fact that it doesn't feel super different. I mean, the stuff about the cult and some of the more like detailed bits are very different from other books that I've read, but I would say the overarching like idea and plot of this story feels very similar to books and movies on cults that I have seen in the past. I think this one's gonna really depend on how it ends. If it has a really good ending, I can see myself like bumping this up to a 4. If I don't like the ending and I feel like it's super predictable, I might have to drop it to a 3.5. I'm enjoying my time with it. It's just, I feel like I've spent a lot of time with it and I want it to move along quicker. Now that I'm closer to the end, I feel like it should start going a lot faster. So I feel like I'll have more feelings once I finish it. I just feel like I'm really gonna have to wait and see how this ends for me to decide if I like it. But I will say the cult part is really good. I am really enjoying it, which is good because I feel like I'm usually disappointed by a lot of cult books. But I do feel like this one is pretty interesting. So I don't know, I'm gonna have to wait and see, but that's where I'm at, that's what I'm reading, and I will update you when I finish it, and hopefully I end up liking this one, so we will see. Hello friends, I am back with another update. Last night I did finish The Last Days and I have very mixed feelings about this book because there are a lot of things I actually did like about it. The big thing being the aspect of the cult. I feel like Adam Neville did a really good job of making it very interesting and also different and also not like every other cult book. I mean, I say that loosely because the book does follow a very familiar plot in terms of structure. I feel like the cult itself is pretty interesting and different for the most part. There are some things about it that I feel very familiar to movies or other books that I've read, but for the most part I feel like it was a very interesting, different take on a cult book. I think my biggest issue with this book is that it is incredibly too long. I am someone that doesn't like books over 350 pages. I just feel like anything over 350 is just too much, honestly. I just feel like it's too much. Some books I think need to be long and some books do it well, but I would say like 80 to 90% of big books do not need to be big books. So for me, anytime I see a book that's over 350 pages, I'm like, oh great, okay, we're gonna have some lulls, we're gonna have some dragging, it's gonna be a time. And I definitely felt like that with this book. I felt like it could have been probably cut in half, honestly. Like, there was a lot of information and a lot of setup, and there were some I do feel like there were some good reasons why the book was long, but the ending half took forever to get to the point. Like, the ending half honestly frustrated me more than the beginning half, which I thought was going to be the opposite, but the ending half was just, it just took too long to get to the point. I was waiting for like things to start rolling, and it did after like, I don't know, 85% into the book, and I was just like, oh my god, like, this is too much. I also think the book did a lot of great creepy moments. There was some really great imagery. I said that in my last check-in, I think, and I still agree with that statement. I do think that the book did a good job at having a lot of creepy moments. My biggest issue is that I think this book would be better in movie form. One, you could cut out a lot of the filler and unnecessary things and like the dragging parts. And two, I just think it would be more punchy as a film and seeing it with your eyes versus just reading it, because a lot of those creepy moments didn't really do much for me personally, because I didn't have any of that tension or anything that I get from like a documentary style found footage movie. So I think that had it been in that kind of media format, I would have liked it better, which sucks, and it's hard to kind of judge it on that because it's not a movie, it's a book. But the whole time I was reading it, I just wanted it to be a movie to speed things up and just to get more of like a punchy, tense feeling when I was, you know, experiencing those moments. The ending is pretty predictable. I feel like there aren't that many ways you could end a story like this, and it went in a direction that I wasn't really like shocked or surprised by. So for me, the ending didn't really help or hinder the book. It was a fine ending. It didn't make me mad. It wasn't really like amazing in my opinion, so it was just kind of like a, okay, this is the end. So I think for those reasons, this book is gonna sit at a 3.5. I just don't think I can give it 4 stars. I wish it hadn't felt so repetitive a lot of the time. Like, I feel like we were learning new things, but at the same time I feel like it was just repeating the same thing over and over and over again. Loved the cult stuff. I thought the cult stuff was really interesting and actually worked the best for me out of the the whole book, it's not gonna be able to push me to a 4-star. But next up, we are on to the 4th and final book. I started last night. I am about 26% into Fantasticland. This is a very weird book. I was not expecting the style of writing at all. I didn't really know much about this book though going into it. I've heard a lot about it, but I didn't know much about it, and the writing style really threw me for a loop. Each chapter is an interview, and the interview is written very oddly. You don't ever hear the questions being asked of the interviewee. You're just reading their answers in paragraph form, and it kind of feels like they're telling a story, but you can obviously tell that they're like answering questions at the same time. It's a very weird, I don't know how I feel about it so far. It's interesting. I like the plot, which this is the book about Fantasticland, which is a theme park that opened up in the 70s and was kind of competing with Disney World, and it's super popular because every like little attraction is completely different and looks different and smells different and feels different. It feels like you're entering different kind of worlds. And this hurricane comes through and basically isolates the people in the theme park, and it becomes this like Lord of the Flies Battle Royale-esque event, and people die, and it's like super crazy. And with every interview, you're basically learning about the event through different POVs. It's a very weird, interesting way to write this kind of story. I don't know, it has my attention. I'm intrigued. I just hope this style of writing won't ruin the experience for me. So I'm gonna keep reading it. Today I have to edit, so I don't know how much reading I will get done today, but I will definitely be reading it tonight, obviously. So I will update you when I have more thoughts and opinions on Fantasticland, and I will see you then. Hello my friends, and welcome to the last check-in for this reading vlog. Earlier today I finished Fantasticland, and I have to say this is by far my favorite out of the 4 that I read, which really surprised me, and I'm not quite sure why, because it kind of has all the makings for me to like it. I don't know, I just didn't expect myself to enjoy this one, and I'm not really sure why. But as of right now, I'm kind of tottering between a 4 and a 4.5 for this one. My biggest criticism of this book, and really the only reason I can't give it 5 stars, is because I really don't like the writing style. I think why it bothers me is because it's written like an interview. So every chapter is an interview with a different person, but the questions that the interviewer is asking the people are taken out, so it's kind of made to seem like they're telling a story, but for me, it kind of throws me off. I don't know. The whole time I was reading it, I was like, this would just be better if you had added in the question part. Like, I'd rather have just seen the interview questions and then seen the people replying to them. Maybe that's just me, I don't know, but it really frustrated me. It kind of just threw me off. It was very weird. I totally get why the author did it. It was to make it seem like an interview, but also make it seem like you were getting the story, not just an interview, and I do think it succeeded. I don't think it was not successful. It just was very bizarre, and for me personally, I just wasn't a big fan of how it was written. I will say that not only was this my favorite book out of the bunch, but I also do think that it is the scariest, and the reason it's the scariest to me personally is because it is the most realistic. I can 100% see this happening. I don't for a second think that this wouldn't happen if a situation like this occurred. I totally believe it. And if I put myself in the shoes of the characters, I would 100% be terrified. So I will definitely say this one, hands down, is the scariest to me personally. Not only is this book like scary though, it's just a frustrating read. I don't know if anyone else felt like this or if it's just me, but sometimes when I was reading the interviews, I was getting so frustrated because a lot of people, like, they interview all kinds of people. They don't just interview like the people that were there in the amusement park after the hurricane and stuff and when everything went wild. They interview like outside people as well, and a lot of people were like, oh, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe these people turned to violence. And I'm sitting here going, you can't? Because I 100% can believe that this happened. There are so many examples of things like this, not only in media like The Hunger Games, Battle Royale, Lord of the Flies. I mean, there are so many examples of this, but just like in real world too. Like the Stanford prison experiment was the first thing that came to mind. Obviously it's very different, but you know, I feel like you can make some connections. It was just so frustrating hearing these people act so surprised when I didn't think it was that surprising at all. I was like, yeah, no, this makes sense. This is adding up. I can believe it. So it definitely made for a frustrating experience, especially because just like listening to everyone's side, it's just a very interesting experience. I don't know how to explain it without like going into a lot of detail of like how I felt frustrated, but just know that there are some things that obviously frustrated me that are more spoilery. I will say this is also just my opinion. You can all disagree with me if you read this book. I don't know if anyone agrees with me, but in my personal opinion, I actually don't know if this situation would have happened in the book like it did had one person not have been there. One person in my mind is pretty much the reasoning behind why all of it happened, and I actually think that's really terrifying that one person had so much say in how things proceeded and how things panned out, and it's just terrifying. And the one person, you get an interview with them too, and the whole interview is kind of crazy because I can definitely see people reading it and questioning if that one person was actually, I guess, like the villain. But when you read the interview, I'm like, how can you not believe that they're the villain? Like, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there would have been another person in that amusement park that would have made things go the same way, but I truly believe had that one person not been there, things probably would have panned out just so differently. It just would have went so differently. And that's what's actually really scary, is that one person had that much influence. The other thing, comparing it to Battle Royale and The Hunger Games, that's probably like not the best thing to compare it to, but those are what I have to compare this book to. I will say that The Hunger Games and Battle Royale feel more successful to me because you are in the situation with the kids when it's happening. You're living the experiences with them, whereas in Fantasticland, it's after the fact and you're getting like detailed, stories, right? Like people are explaining and describing things. And for me, that kind of took away a lot of the tenseness and I guess a lot of the scary aspect because it was after the fact, right? Like I knew that nothing that was said was gonna really affect anything because everything had already happened. It had already played out. Like I was just someone seeing the story told. I don't know, I think Battle Royale and Hunger Games are more successful because you're actually in the middle of it. For me, I feel like that's where Fantasticland also kind of just didn't work out as well, but I will say I still really, really enjoyed it, and I thought it was a very interesting book, very fun. Well, fun. It was fun. I did like it. I'm glad I read it, and like I said, it was my favorite out of the 4, and I did enjoy it the most. Okay, so that is the end of this vlog where I read your scariest book recommendations. Part 2 is going to be, you know, slightly different, obviously, but that will be up here in a little bit. I will be reading some more books and obviously taking you along the journey of reading them with me. But I hope you enjoyed this first installment. I thought it was really fun. I hope you all had fun. I hope that you liked the books that I picked. I know a lot of them I didn't love, but hopefully that doesn't make you all too mad at me. But if you did enjoy this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. That lets me know that you enjoy vlogs like this and you want to see more of them. Also lets me know that you are excited for part 2 that will be coming soon. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I also have a Patreon linked down in the description box. We can become friends, talk about books, horrifying books, thrilling books, romance books, manga, all that good fun stuff. And with that being said, I hope you're having a great day, night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!